Live with Alan Jones and Graham Richardson.
Welcome back to Richo and Jones, and I will shush you when you need to be shushed. So you can't shut the bloke up. Even in the ad break, he's been driving me insane. In the studio with us is Assistant Treasurer Josh Frydenberg. Welcome, Josh.
And the reason he's here is that, and I'm saying this to you and ignoring him, I can't believe we've got another discussion paper. We are sick of discussion papers. We don't even know what we're discussing. And this is in anticipation of a white paper on tax.
What's the difference between a white paper and a green paper, apart from the colours? I mean, who cares? Does anyone care?
And how many papers? We've got 1 million papers. But I should tell our viewers that this young man who's with us tonight, Josh Frydenberg, has just been appointed by Tony Abbott a couple of months ago as the Assistant Treasurer. He's immensely well credentialed. He has an honours an honours degree from Monash University in Law and Economics. He was a Fulbright Scholar to the United States. He is an Oxford University Scholar with a Master of Philosophy in International Relations. He has a double full blue for tennis, and you're utterly unathletic like most Labor Party people.
He represented Mike Cleary was in Labor. He wasn't bad.
No, he's good.
Yes.
How many times did he represent Australia?
I don't know how many times, but plenty is the answer.
What
plenty.
Sport?
Rugby union, rugby league and athletics.
Track and field. That's correct.
What's that, athletics?
Yeah, he came third in 1962 in Perth.
In Perth,
Serafino Anteo in the 100 yards.
Yeah, so...
Not 100 metres. Josh Frydenberg,
he was in what party? He was in what party?
Labor Party.
Correct.
Outstanding.
Good. How many of your mates came third in the, in the 100 yards?
In the 100
or the
yards.
metres?
Hang on.
How many of your mates did?
You coached the Oxford tennis team, didn't you, Alan?
What's that got to do with athletics? What's that got to do with athletics? Nothing.
Can I just make one correction? This is slightly embarrassing for me. I was awarded the Fulbright Scholarship, but I took the scholarship to Oxford instead and subsequently went to Harvard.
Do you know where Oxford is?
Yes, I've been there. I drove through it.
Not far from Massachusetts. Now, look,
it's very cold there, Richo.
Down to business.
Well, I know that.
What are we having a discussion paper about tax of all things when your problem, you're the Assistant Treasurer, is spending? Is spending. You can't tax the nation to prosperity. Everyone said that. What are you going to do about spending?
Well, you're right. The priority has to be to get spending under control, and we're doing that. And we inherited We inherited real spending growth at 3.7%. We've got that down to 1%. As Joe Hockey has said, Australia is spending $100 million a day more than we are taking in receipts.
All right, now let's get how you've got spending under control. Now you have railed about Labor's failures on the spending front.
Oh, listen.
Railed. Gone on and on and on. Debt, you can't stop talking about it. You're the same. Do you believe, either of you, that 60% debt to GDP ratio is okay, like your Prime Minister has said?
He didn't say that.
He did
not say that.
Can I say I was standing next to him?
I know you were, and I said, instead of my column, looking mournful.
No,
that's
Richo,
what I said, looking mournful.
I was standing next to him. What he was pointing out was that the trajectory of debt to GDP was heading to Greek-like proportions of 122%.
155% of GDP, Greece, and he said...
That's right.
Compared
and
to 60%.
We never looked like
but he
getting
said
there. This is a ridiculous exaggeration.
Josh, this is the problem you've got, because these people are in absolute denial.
These people?
You are in denial. You've been in denial ever since Tony Abbott became...
I dispute this entirely. I have bagged Wayne Squanner's Treasurer, I bagged Gillard, I bagged Rudd. Okay. They let debt out of control. And when it came to the out years with NDIS and with Gonski, they left us in a hole. I've never denied it. What I will not cop is this extraordinary exaggeration that you lot go on with all the time. But now the cat's out of the bag. Your own bloke let it out of the bag.
No, it's nonsense.
That 60% figure is stunning.
Just keep quiet for a minute.
No, I beg your pardon.
Just keep quiet, because forget you and forget Frydenberg, forget Abbott, forget Jones. The intergenerational report said that if we had continued on the spending of the Gillard and Rudd governments, our debt would have risen to 57% of GDP by 2055. That would be the intergenerational report, not Abbott, not Frydenberg, $2,610 billion. The intergenerational report
How
said...
seriously can you take that?
An interest bill of $40 billion a year. Now, $40 billion a year. Abbott has tried to turn that back. All he's got from Shorten and Co is total opposition.
Just a minute. First off, you're quoting a report. Now, just remember this about that report. At one stage in there, it's got 20 years of 5% unemployment rate. How the hell can you predict that for 40 years' time? Those things are guesses. Now, you look at the Treasury. Every guess they make for the next budget's wrong. Why would they get it right for 40 years' time? They can't get it right for one.
See, that's
Give me a break.
That's why he's the cheerleader for the Labor Party. They are in permanent denial. Rudd and Gillard vandalised this economy. They haven't produced a surplus since 1989. Since 1989.
But I'm not disputing this.
Well, hang on, you're in denial.
I want to
Josh.
see the fix. Now, we're talking to Josh.
Okay, so Richo, Jonesy, what has happened here is we inherited a massive mess, right? So Alan's absolutely right. We inherited this debt trajectory which was on Greek-like proportions. Now, we passed 75% already of the budget measures that we took down last year. Now, we've still got a long way to go, and what Tony Abbott was saying is 50 to 60% is actually too high, but it's a pretty good result given what we had been left with so far. And the work now is going to continue in this budget coming up. But the tax paper that was put out yesterday, the discussion paper, is about how do we move our tax system from where it was in the 1950s to where it should be in the 21st century. Because we've got a growing digitalisation of the economy. We've got still an over-reliance on income tax and company tax. We have 800,000 companies in Australia, but just 12 companies produce 1/3 of our corporate tax take. We spend $40 billion a year just on compliance. If you're a small business in Pennant Hills and you have income under $75,000 a year for your small business, you spend $90 out of every $1,000 worth of income just trying to meet your compliance requirements as part of your tax.
But Josh, there are two kinds of people watching you now.
Yeah.
One is the small businessman, for which we all have sympathy, even though the Labor Party continue to punish him. But nonetheless, at least he has the opportunity to make certain deductions based on the cost of him earning his income.
Sure.
So there is a slight bit of relief.
Yes.
The other viewer that you've got here now is the poor coot that just get a wages and salary and pays personal tax. And he is paying collectively 47% of all income tax. The little personal tax man's got nowhere to run. There's no incentive about having a job in that situation.
And as we know, the tax brackets are not indexed to either inflation or to changes in wages growth.
So what are you going to do about those tax brackets? Because bracket creep obviously is the big problem.
Yeah.
If you're a battler and you hit the next leap, the problem is you're not earning any more money.
And it's a real problem. What it showed in this report was nearly just over 1/4 of the taxpayers today are in the top two tax brackets, from 80,000 to 180,000, from 180,000 and above. But in 10 years' time, that goes to 43%. So it's a massive jump. So 2 million more taxpayers will be in that bracket from 80,000 to 180,000.
But the figures are staggering. 57.5% of personal income tax is collected from 17% of taxpayers who earn more than 80,000. 24% of personal income tax comes from 2.3% of taxpayers who earn over 180,000.
Welcome to our progressive system.
This is it, and this is hideous. Now, there is another factor here, though, is there not? And that is, and this is what Mitt Romney referred to, and what most probably cost him the election against Obama, that we're now reaching the point in Australia where 50% of tax-paying units are getting more back from the government than they're paying in tax.
Yeah.
So you then have to try and win an election by pitching to those people.
Yeah.
How do you win an election when you're saying to them, well, I'm sorry, we've got to trim spending, and it means taking something back? And we have a metaphor of the problem at the table. A metaphor of the problem at the table. He wants his gold pass back. He wants his gold pass back.
That's got nothing to do with
Do you want your gold pass back?
Yes, and I'll get it. But if you go back to this argument, and this is what really staggers me about you lot. You talk about you lot. Well, you talk about you people. I'm talking about you lot. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Now, here you are. You've got. You come down with a budget. You have a crack at everyone who's little. That's not the problem. The problem was
another exaggeration.
It's not.
Everyone is little.
Why do you think the polls are where they are? Anyway, look, that's an argument you've already lost. But the real question is, it's the promises that got you into strife. It's saying you do nothing to health and education, all the other things. They're the problems. It's a matter of going into an election, taking people into your confidence and saying, this is the real problem. I can't make those sort of promises. I won't make them again. That was a mistake. What we're going to do is tell you the truth. Now, you do that, Josh. You go into an election doing that, and you'll get welcomed. You can't lose if you do that.
But to be honest, that's why we've put out this discussion paper yesterday, because we need a year-long debate to actually build a consensus for hard reform. I mean, take John Howard back in 1998. He had a thumping majority after the 96 election. He put it all on the line with his GST. He actually lost the two-party preferred vote. He had 49%.
I know.
But he held on, and history now tells a very good story about
okay, now look, here's the guts of your problem. No one wants to tackle the GST. No one. We have the third lowest GST rate in the world. The average
has to go up.
It has to go up. But no one wants to touch it. Now, Tony Abbott says, well, the state is right in the sense that the GST legislation involves approval from the states. We'll change it. If the states approve it, approval shorten is an intellectual lightweight. He wouldn't know what it meant.
That's because he disagrees with you.
But if you want money, if you take the GST from where it is now, which brings in $56 billion,
right.
Third biggest
to 15, you get 80.
Yeah.
But then we all forget, don't we, the history of the GST, where John Howard couldn't get it through. So he had to make concessions to Meg Lees. And the concessions exempted certain things, including food, such that you get these stupid anomalies where you buy a hamburger tonight and you're going to pay a GST on it. I have a feed of Wagyu beef because I bought it and I don't pay any GST. Now, if you stopped all of those exemptions, you'd get another $12 billion, and you then have a welfare system which looks after...
Which can cope with it.
Yes,
you have to...
You've got to look after the lower...
Actually, 47% of our total consumption of the people watching this show is subject to the GST. The rest is not.
Correct.
Could you imagine how much tax you'd pay if Wagyu beef was on the list? You'd pay a fortune.
Well, no, Graham, you've made a good point here, because you see, the reason I love a GST, and I wouldn't care where it went, it is, and people don't, this is not explained, and I think, Josh, to be fair, you people are terrible explaining things.
Yes, you people.
You know, because the GST is the one tax you can avoid. So he loves driving a Mercedes-Benz car.
I've never driven one. I drive a Lexus.
I drive a Holden.
His driver has one, right?
I don't have a driver, he does. I have a Lexus.
No, but this is an important point. Okay, I drive a Mercedes-Benz, you drive a Holden.
Okay. I drive a Lexus.
I pay more GST. No, I'm just saying a 65,000,
right, yeah.
You're paying more. Your wife loves wearing pearls, mine hates them. You pay more tax. You like eating out, I'm happy to get the vegetables from the garden. I pay less tax. In other words, you can adjust your behaviour and your consumer habits to minimise your GST.
But, you know, talking about how silly and complex the system is in this discussion paper, it raises the issue of a pizza versus a pizza roll.
Pizza roll.
And it says a pizza is subject to the GST, but a pizza roll that you buy at the local baker's delight...
You put pizza on top, and that's different.
It's not because it's the way you cut it, it depends on what's on top, it's what is the recipe for the dough. I mean, that's how silly our system is.
Now listen, let me play right into Richo's hands here.
Yes.
Because you and Mr Hockey, I hate to say this, are in big trouble. The Labor Party took a policy to the last election to tax bank deposits. You, in opposition, opposed this. Bank deposits of up to $250,000, 0.05% tax. These are retirees, these are people who've saved. These are the gods of our economy.
Sure.
People who put themselves outside the need to be looked after by the taxpayer. You said in opposition, this is disgraceful, this is a rape and pillage of the savers of the nation. Now, you are going to take this policy, according to Joe Hockey, and introduce it. You will get smashed. You will get politically, you cannot rob these people who are already being punished for what? A piddling well, Julia Gillard said 773 million. You'll get a piddling 500 million.
Alan, let me just put some facts on the table. No decisions have been taken, I can tell you that. But let me put some facts on the table. The government gives a guarantee for people's savings up to $250,000 in the case of a bank collapse. You go around the world and a lot of countries have a program where they have this financial stability fund which creates a pool of money in the event that something goes wrong. Now, the financial regulators, whether it was the Reserve Bank, whether it was APRA, they all recommended to Chris Bowen he go through with this idea. He said he loved it. He said he was fixing the roof for a rainy day. He said people would thank him in 20 years' time. That's what Chris Bowen said.
John.
Now, what Joe Hockey said, to be fair to Joe Hockey, he said, let's send this off to David Murray and his financial system.
And David Murray said no.
And David Murray said, I don't like this if we get the capital levels of the banks to the level that would actually protect us in the event of a global financial crisis.
This is...
So that's the history.
No, Josh,
that's the history.
No, Josh, no, Josh, that's not the history. You're only telling half the story, and you're too smart. You're too smart. You shouldn't be telling half the story. The other half of the story is, and you know this for a fact, and tell them out there this is the truth, and I'll use your language. It was to be put into a financial stability fund, this is what you've told them tonight, to protect depositors.
Correct.
Against the highly unlikely event of a bank collapse.
Correct.
Fine.
Agree with all that.
Wonderfully laudable. What's the other half of the equation? And here's your hand in their pockets. But in the meantime, the fund would be used to offset debt. So, in other words, we're looking for a cool $500 million by putting our hands. There'll be no bank collapse. No bank collapse. Well, this is a backdoor way of sticking our hands in deposits of depositors.
Which goes in the bottom line of the budget.
Absolutely. That's the guts of it. And we've got to face that. Josh, they're not going to cop it out there in Voterland.
Yeah. Well, the whole motivation for this policy was to put money aside for that rainy day, as many other countries do.
Their words, Josh,
on the
highly unlikely event.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, the fund would be used to offset debt.
Yeah.
You've got your hand in the retirees' pockets. For what? Now, this bloke, all the time, one of your great strengths in all the time you've been in politics, now I'm serious, has to be, say, you've got to weigh up the cost as opposed to the benefit, the political cost. For $500 million, is it worth?
They won't do it, Alan. They won't take it to an election. They're in too much strife already. They can't add any more to their saddlebags. That'll be it.
And you don't like it as much, Alan, but as we know, we've just changed the rules around the unclaimed monies regime, which Labor changed as their cash grab.
But we don't want you to claim it. That's what we're saying.
But hang on, Josh. Now, here we are. I'm sorry. To people out there, what they're saying is Gillard and co, Miss Gillard and Rudd said, if your deposit has been there, your money's been in the bank. My niece has a little baby on The Godfather.
Yes.
I think the baby's beautiful, so I'll put $5,000 in his account.
Yes.
He's not going to touch the account. Gillard said, we'll take that money after 3 years if it's not claimed. You want hairs on your chest because you're saying, we're not doing that, we won't touch it till after 7 years.
Alan,
you've got no right to touch it at all.
Can I say with greatest respect, you know what we've done? We've exempted all children's accounts from the unclaimed monies regime.
But
that's
mate,
what we want to hear on
this bloke has got unclaimed money in a bank account. You've got no right to that. On the argument that, oh, Mr Richardson, we're saving you.
He knows too much.
I haven't got any money in a bank account. That's the problem.
No, but the argument is, oh, we're saving you from bank fees. Well, that's your worry.
All right, hang on. We've got to get to a break, so I've got to ask one question. Do I get a word in here? Good on you.
Oh, you've had too many.
One of the things in this report today that disturbs me, if you look at supermarket power, you've got 38% on the eastern seaboard is Woolworths, 32% is Coles, and 11%'s Aldi. So you're over 80. Right, yeah, over 80%. I got that off 2GB. It can't be all bad. Ross Greenwood, I was listening tonight driving over. That's market power that's just way, way too big. Are you really going to give them pharmacies? Because when you do, they go to the back of the store, way to the back, and the number of pharmacists employed in this country will nosedive.
They have to
so
be
the kind of service you get, the kind of service will be nothing like you get today.
They have to be divestiture.
There's just got to be
Richard,
some
what
rules.
you're talking about is Ian Harper's competition policy review, which is the first such review in nearly 2 decades since Fred Hilmer's review. Now, we're going to obviously consider these recommendations, but you make a good point about the concentration of market power in Australia.
Divestiture.
Now, what has been a positive, though, over recent times is Aldi and Costco have helped.
But Aldi are taking market share.
They are certainly taking market share.
But it's still look. But add them in. They're just part of the big guys.
Sure. And while you've got that monopoly, you can knock off the supplier.
Well,
and the poor supplier's got to take. He's a price taker.
If you grow vegetables,
these
sort of people are crushed. But even if you're a small business and you're making some sort of tin food, they just don't take you.
That's correct.
It is massive market power.
And in America, it's not
allowed.
allowed.
An abuse.
And as a Liberal Party, we're on the side of small business.
Well, you've got to prove it.
Show it.
Because 500,000 small business jobs, Richo, were lost under the last Labor government.
Josh, you need divestiture. They shouldn't have that. I want to ask you one other thing out there, because this is dreadful.
Because
on pharmacies.
Well, it is very quick. These are this whole drawdown rates. Now, there are people watching you tonight who know what this means. Basically, there are statutory provisions whereby, and I keep saying self-funded retirees are the heroes, because they're looking after themselves. But the government says if you're under 65, you must withdraw 4% of the aggregate amount that you've got. Now, for example, if it's $1 million, you've got to draw down 40,000. Now, it then gets worse, because if you're from 65 to 74, you've got to draw down 5%. 75 to 79, 6%. Now, your money... Don't wind me up.
Well, I'm getting really serious.
This is very critical. I don't worry about them. This is critical. Because, Josh, they're not earning 4%.
Sure.
They're not earning 6%.
Because interest rates are low.
Interest rates are low. Why aren't you going to change the drawdown rates?
Yeah. Well,
yes,
you raise a
please.
You raise a good point. Look, self-funded retirees, and there's more than 1 million of them with their self-managed super funds, they are taking responsibility as a coalition.
Well,
we want to
help
support
them.
that.
Now, your mate, Shorten, I had on my program at least 3 times, who didn't understand what I was talking about. Now, every time I mention Shorten, he's got to go. He didn't know what I was talking about. Josh, one final thing before we go. Drawdown rates. If you're going to talk the lingo of the battler out there, that's got to be at the top of the list.
Okay.
All right. We're going to have to leave it at this point. And Josh,
he's coming back, isn't he?
No. Well, you want to have him back after the break? Have we had enough
Happy
of him?
to be.
For God's sake, he's been on for half an hour. All right.
Talk sport with us.
Oh, he's not going to talk sport with us.
He loves his sport.
And I've still got to have a go at you. I'm proud of you. You are actually not wearing a blue tie.
No,
which means
there's
a new faction. There's a new faction in the Liberal Party.
What colour is it?
It's another blow against Tony Abbott. I can see it's part of the plot. You're in it as well.
We're now worried what tie Tony Abbott wears. Give me a break.
There we are. Anyway, we'll be back in just a moment on Richo and Jones.